Now then, past all the nonsense, hopefully. Let's talk about Ansari. Hopefully, you guys had a chance to read over that over the extended weekend. I know some of you are trying to get hold of the book. I did send you guys the link to the PDF in your email. Told you about checking your email. So hopefully we're all caught up. We're all literally on the same page. Oh, goodness. What's your name, man?
Curtis.
Hi, Curtis. So to begin with, I want to just talk about Ansari a little bit. For the first 5-10 minutes, I want to try to summarize some of the big ideas. See, this is the first chapter, right? This is the first real, like, I have thoughts, I want you guys to know section of the book. If you were going to summarize this to a buddy, right? What are some of the high points you would try to hit? Some of the things you would mention to that friend of yours? Yes, ma'am.
He was basically talking to like senior citizens, and he also was talking to younger people of the generation, trying to get a viewpoint of how finding like your soulmate was back then and how it is now.
Yeah. So how things have changed over the decades. You use that term soulmate, that maybe even wasn't a thing that the old folks thought about, right? What was the big sort of difference for them? He had a term. Anybody remember that term he uses? Companions. Calls it a companionate marriage or companionate relationship, right? What's the difference between that and this soulmate sort of setup that I guess we're in now, right? Yeah, I mean, the older folks did it differently, but I'm just saying, like, what's different about it? Like, we'll start with the one that we probably know. What's the deal with the soulmate setup? How's that work?
They like took the time to find out who they really love.
Yeah, you take the time, and I think part of the argument there is you have the time, right? You have more time available to you a lot of the time. Find out who you really love. Why is that notable? What does that even mean?
Because I guess in their time, like the senior time, they didn't really have a lot of time to find that person. They would just, figure out they're not serious or whatever, and if they're not, they're just best friends for the next marriage or whatever.
Well, I mean, because part of it is you're like 18, 19, 20. You're around about your age now, right? And it seems like the world, to a large degree, is sort of expecting you to figure out this whole adult thing, right? And part of that, honestly, even today, is married, get a mortgage, get a family, right? Get all this damn responsibility on you, right? So you don't really have the time maybe to go looking for that soulmate, which is like they have a couple stories in the book from people talking about their soulmates. It's that Hallmark movie, Lifetime movie, any of those awful movies. The Notebook comes to mind. Any of that trash you've seen. Like if any movie where a guy is like running through the rain, or you know what I'm saying. Soulmates, right? There's music when they walk in the room, like that kind of shit. They didn't have time for that. They just kind of look around. There's all there's stories of people like, oh, they lived on my floor, or they lived on my block, right? Thinking about all the people I knew when I was 18, 19, 20, whoa, terrifying. I know some of you right now are like, oh, we're meant to be, like whoever you're with. Probably not. Probably not. It's probably a good thing. You have time to figure it out now. And that's the big difference. You also don't have those expectations on you. There's another term he throws around there in that first chapter to sort of describe the place in your lives where you guys are right now. Does anyone remember that? If you don't remember it, could you at least help me out with a description? Like, what the hell am I talking about right now? What is this time in your life, according to Ansari? How does it work? With your chest, please.
I was trying to think
Ah.
I don't know how.
Is it emerging adulthood?
Good. He calls it emerging adulthood. Why does he call it that? What's that all about?
Because we have a fully adult, because we're not fully adults yet.
Fully what?
Fully adults.
Sure. And again, you're not really expected to be, right? Like college and or the time immediately after high school, like maybe you don't go to college, you go out and get a job. Either way, you still, like as a society, we've sort of accepted the fact you got a couple years, you know, you kind of grow into this whole adulthood thing. Whereas again, for those old folks, yeah, it's messing with me too. For those old folks, so I'm like a squirrel, like I get really distracted, and yeah, I don't know what that fucker's doing, but anyway, those old folks, they get 18, 19, it's like, get out of the house and do all that, like right now, you know? You know, emerging into that. It's like, you gotta go right now, type of thing. But yeah, you guys have some time to figure stuff out. You have some means to figure stuff out. I do this like you have money, that's not true, but you have currency in other ways, right? That's emerging adulthood. That's where you guys are right now, according to Ansari. You're growing into this adulthood thing, which is kind of nice. Any other big ideas or big moments, highlights we need to make sure we hit? You guys have done a pretty decent job. Let me see. Oh, there's one big one we're missing. He touches on it at the end of the chapter. Talking about really where you guys probably live most of the day. A certain kind of world, he calls it. Some of you are there right now. Phone world. Yeah. He doesn't say a lot about it. It's right at the end of the first chapter. Okay. I think he's kind of bridging to the rest of the book where he's going to talk more about that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Does anybody remember anything he has to say about the phone world or how that works? What he thinks about it?
24/7 war.
Excellent quotation, by the way, right? I don't know if everybody, he says you have a 24/7 singles bar in your pocket, is the quotation. I've read this book a lot. And again, considering, you know, that's like the focus of his book is modern romance, specifically, anytime you want, you can pick up your phone and say, I wonder who's out there, type of thing, right? That's very new. That is very new. And again, to look outward a little bit to the rest of what we're going to talk about this semester, it's not just romance that you have in your pocket, right? Just about anything, if you know where to look, it's in your pocket. Like you can get to it anytime, right? That access. That's kind of interesting. It's kind of powerful in a weird way, right? The phone world. Anything else he has to say about it? Does anybody recall? There's a couple other choice descriptions he gives there at the end of the first chapter. Yes, sir.
He compared like how it's different from being in the bar.
Okay, good. Do you remember how?
He said because nowadays everybody be on their phone.
Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, he has another good quotation for that. He says something like, I want to get it right because I can't remember that one verbatim. He says there's a bunch of people staring at their phones, like looking for somewhere better to be than where they actually are, something like that, right? Scathing. Like you understand, that's probably a bunch of shade thrown at you guys. Have you guys ever felt like that? You ever been hanging around a bunch of people and maybe you realize for a moment that none of you are really interacting with each other? You're all just kind of doing this instead? Classes in the past have told me stories about, like I'll ask something like, oh, you guys ever hang out just to hang out? They're like, yeah, I hang out with my friends in my dorm. Like, okay, what do you guys do? We do like Instagram. Like, what do you mean? They're like, well, we're all on Instagram together. I'm like, no, you're not. You're hanging out like in physical proximity. You're not hanging out with each other. You're diving into your phone, right? You just happen to like maybe share body heat a little bit. That's not interaction, right? That's why I call it a phone world. And there's two sides to that. There's the positive, there's all the possibilities, there's all the really cool stuff you can learn about and interact with, right, in that world. But at the same time, according to Ansari, it's also a phone world, and the more invested or sort of the further into it you dive, maybe the more you kind of separate yourself just from what's going on out here, right, in this world. It was kind of interesting. All right. Pretty decent summary of the first chapter. We missed a couple things. I mean, we didn't talk about Alfredo, for instance. I thought he bears mentioning, but what I want to do now, I promised you guys last week, and I know you're excited. I want to think about goals, okay? We mentioned last time, and that's going to take me out if I don't deal with it. We mentioned last time, one of the big questions you have to figure out, and we're going to start today. What are the author's goals in this text? What is Ansari trying to do? Right? And there's two kinds of ways to think about this. I'll try to, because I know that desk is going to block some of you. There are global concerns and local concerns. We're probably going to talk more about this one today, okay? Local concerns, it means just what it sounds like, local, near to the ground. When we talk about a single quotation, okay, that single quotation can have local goals. It's trying to accomplish like maybe one thing, okay? Global, again, means kind of what it sounds like, much bigger in scope, okay? So it would be hard, probably, to take one quotation from the book and point at global concerns that Ansari has, right? What you would need to do is take 3 or 4, or maybe a few more quotations from the book together. Look at them together, and then say, oh, this plus this plus this helps me think about what he's trying to do, like, throughout the whole book. See what I'm saying? This is a thesis. This is body paragraphs. The other way to think about it, okay? This is much smaller, much more specific. You need a handful of these to even approach this, okay? But you do want to think about both. Like I said, we're going to concentrate on local today. Local concerns, local goals. What is Ansari trying to do on a very small, like on a single page, in a single paragraph type of thing, right? How do you guys imagine we do that? How do we start to figure that out? Where do we go? What do we look at? What's up? I heard murmurs. If you want to talk about a text, any text, I don't care. How do you do that? What do you need to show me? You're trying to explain something to me. Might it have anything to do with your homework that you hopefully did?
You start with quotations.
What happened?
You start with quotations.
Good. Usually quotations, at the very least specific evidence, so it could be a paraphrase. But in this case, given my hint, you want some quoted material, right? You want to be able to point to the book and say, look at this specific thing. I'm going to talk to you about it, and I'm going to explain to you how it helps accomplish this, right? Whatever that might be. Yes. Let's see what you guys came up with. Any quotation at all. I told you I'm not a salesman, and I'm not. The only way I know to pitch this part is to say, this is your opportunity to use my brain a little bit. I'm pretty good at this. I would crush this class if I were a student.
Are we doing just chapter 1, or do we inject?
Well, don't go past chapter 1 in case anybody's read ahead.
That's what I'm saying. Do we do the introduction in chapter 1?
Oh, yeah. One of those, yes. Yes, please.
Okay. We can go back to the scenes part.
Singles, okay. Yeah. Let me erase this. Okay. Correct me if, but he says something like you have a 24/7.
Single bar in your pocket.
Does he say at all times or something? Or am I making that up? I could be making that up. Oh, I didn't write that one down.
Say all time, it just says in your pocket.
Okay. Cool. What's the page on that?
31.
31. By the way, while I'm thinking about it, I had a couple people ask me over the weekend, if you're using a printed copy of the book, like we are right here, you have page numbers, right? If you're using an electronic copy of the book, for instance, you don't have the book yet, you're using the PDF that I sent you guys, you don't have page numbers, or this is 2021, some of you are like, you can go and get the Kindle version of the book, like you can just use an e-copy. There are no page numbers, okay? You don't give me them. It's just, I'm sorry. Because in your works cited, you'll do it a little bit differently, and you will note that it's an electronic copy, so then I will know that there are no page numbers. But if you have a book, if you have page numbers, you gotta give it to me, right? Okay. Anyway, 24 singles bar in your pocket. Can you help us out? And I know I'm asking a lot of you today. Can you read like a sentence or two before that? Just, we gotta figure out the context, right? We gotta set this quotation up.
He says, and now that our phone worlds are integral to even the most mundane of tasks, of course, they are also a big part of where we live our romantic lives. Today, if you are on the smartphone, you're carrying a 24/7 single bar in your pocket.
Okay, appreciate it. So, we're working on summary a little bit. The easiest way to supply context, like we've talked about, is to try to summarize the little bit that we got before the quotation, right? How are we introducing this idea? And if you can't quite remember what he said, that's a bummer because he just said it. But also, you know where it is, you can go find it. How do we introduce this idea? He moves us there somehow, right? He doesn't just say it. How do we get there? I'll be honest with anyone who has a book jacket, that's what you're struggling with right there. I would just take that shit off. I mean, don't throw it away if you want to trade the book back in. Just put it on a shelf, but I would take that shit off. Yeah, it just gets in the way. If anyone's familiar with the term segue, he kind of segues a little bit to get us here, right? How does he do that? He's talking about one thing, and he kind of turns and says, well, we're talking about this, but I'm going to kind of move to this.
So my phone work,
Uh-huh. What about it?
it's a place you go to when you find someone you want to see a movie with. Billy said early.
Is that all he says?
Yeah.
What does he say right before this quotation?
Oh, today if you're on a smartphone,
I guess. I'm not looking at it.
Billy said.
What about it?
You have a 24/7 single.
Okay, what does he say before that?
Oh, and now your phone worlds are integral.
Integral.
Integral
Uh-huh.
to even the most mundane of tasks. Of course, they are also.
So your phone is, I'm not trying to, but I am. Your phone is integral to the most mundane of tasks. That sounds fancy maybe to some of you, because you guys don't use those words. But if you don't know what those words mean, of course you look them up, right? You want to know what you're reading. What's he saying? Your phone is integral to the most mundane of tasks. What does that mean? What does integral mean? We'll start there. And again, if you didn't know what it meant, no shame in that. We're here to learn. You looked it up, right?
Necessary to make a whole complete, essential, or fundamental.
It's necessary. It's essential. I would hope that I am integral to this class as a teacher, right? No shade meant, but if like you had to miss a day or two, you're not necessarily integral to the class working. You know what I'm saying? Integral. But if I skip, first of all, you guys are ecstatic because you can go home. But you would show up and be like, well, what are we gonna, like you'd have a moment, like, we can't, right? I'm kind of integral to this whole thing. Good? So it says the phone is integral in what sense? The most mundane tasks. What does that mean?
Most human tasks, like the most regular day tasks.
Every day. Mundane. You get up, you brush your teeth, you do whatever else you do in the morning, right? You have a morning routine. We all do. Is your phone part of that routine? Is it top 5 things you look at when you first wake up? Is it the first thing you look at when you wake up? You don't even see the morning sun first thing. You see whatever your wallpaper is. Pretty integral. There are mornings I don't turn to see my wife. I see my phone. Right? So it's integral to our most mundane tasks every day. Highlighting what? I'm going to use some words. Don't worry about it. Pervasive just means everywhere, all the time, right? Highlighting the pervasive nature of phone usage, Ansari Ansari points to the fact that our phones are because you want to make it part of a sentence, 24/7 singles bar in your pocket. Now we've still not analyzed anything yet, okay? We've only just set it up. But to recap, we have all the formatting stuff. Hopefully you have that down at this point, okay? But context, what do we gain just from the context? And I know it's hard to see because I have this Star Trek thing in front of some of you, and I apologize, I didn't choose it. But if you had to wager, we keep talking about quoting for language. If you do your job with the context, you can help yourself out a little bit when it comes to analysis. Is there any language in this context we could try to take advantage of? Think about more. Any of that language seem a little bit loaded? Any of that language seem a little less mundane, a little less everyday, right? What's up?
That your phone is the same word.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the quotation, dog.
No,
Before we get there.
I wasn't, okay, I wasn't saying that.
Yeah. This part. We're absolutely going to talk about this. But before that, I just want you to appreciate the fact that, again, if you do your job properly, your context can actually set up your analysis. I'm telling you, at least there's one word in our context before the quotation that we can take advantage of. There could be more, but at the very least, I'm guaranteeing there's one word that matters in our context. And it's not phone.
Usage.
I call that a 1B. I'll give you that. You can think about that. There's ways to think about use. That's not the shining star I'm thinking of, but I do like it. Okay. What's up? I'll take wild guesses. If you're wrong, you're wrong. You're allowed to be wrong. That's kind of the point, by the way.
Nature.
What?
Nature.
No. What? What do you chest please? Pervasive. Why? Why do you think, I think, that's very important context. Why? Might have something to do with what it means. Because it's a word. So, yeah. What's pervasive mean? It's the saddest pop quiz ever. I just said it. If you don't know, or if you weren't listening, or hell, I don't know what's going on in your brain, look it up. What's pervasive mean?
Especially an unwelcome influence or physical effect, spreading widely throughout an area or a group.
You gotta project. I heard something about spread widely.
Spreading widely throughout an area.
Yeah, so again, almost like roots on a tree, right? Like just everywhere it goes. It's pervasive, this phone usage, the phones. You just see them everywhere, right? And we're not saying that's a negative or a positive necessarily, but we are highlighting the fact that that's true. Because it is. But now we're taking that kind of with us, right? If I'm the reader, if I'm reading your work, all I know is, all right, we're interested in the fact that phones are everywhere, and we're going to sort of add that onto the idea of this, right? So now we're saying you have this everywhere, always, basically. That offers us some possibilities. We can think about that, right? So we got that in our back pocket. Now we're going to do the hard part. Again, this big test. By the way, this is what you should do every time you think about a quotation. We quote for language. We're actually to the quotation. What language can we think about? This is just not mundane language. It's not everyday language. It's not going to come up all the time in conversation, right? Here's a fun test. Might you say pocket once a day, once a week? Is that fair? Maybe once a week you would hear or say the word pocket. Well, we probably don't need that then, do we? I'm not saying we can't use it, but maybe it's not the star of our quotation. Surely you use these, right? Okay. What's up? Singles bar. That's weird and highly specific. By the way, it's almost a dead term. Some of you, I would wager, are not quite sure what it means. You might know what a singles bar is. You could guess, I think. A bar for singles. A bar specifically, back when people used to be able to hang out with each other, where people would go and be like, oh, you're alone too? Let's not do that, right? Like, that's kind of the whole idea. A singles bar. Okay. Well, let's talk about that some. I'm going to give you two more words. You guys tend to only write things down when I write them up here, so. There are two things you got to think about when you're thinking about language. The denotation and the connotation, okay? You guys do this all the time, by the way. You've already been trained in this. You're just not aware of it. Denotation is a dictionary definition, okay? We basically just gave, informal, but we gave a denotation of singles bar, right? It's a place where lonely people go to be less lonely and drink. Because it's bar. That's a definition. If that's all you do in your papers, you are going to bore me to tears, and you're also probably not going to do very well. Because that's not analysis. That's a book report. You've written enough of those in your life, okay? Connotation. I'm not saying you don't have to give me this occasionally, okay? This is a fine place to start. You can't end here, though. You end here. Connotation is the sort of associations we have with a term or a phrase, okay? There are different expectations, almost, you could say, that come with a certain word or a certain way of speaking. And I'll give you an example. How many of you speak to your mother one way, but your friends a different way? Right? See, I don't. I think that says something weird about the way I grew up. I don't think it's good. I kind of think you should. Right? Why? Why do you speak to your mother a different way? And she knows you do, by the way. She expects you to. Why?
Because you
Respect.
It's respect. So it's all about respect. And it's a good thing. I think most of us would agree it's a pretty good thing to do. Show your mother. Yes. But you're doing that with language, with the connotations around those words. Conversely, when you're hanging out with your friends, you speak differently. Not to show a lack of respect, right? But why then? Why do you speak differently with your friends? Why would they think it's strange if you spoke the way to them that you did to your mother? Right? Why? That's a weird thought, right? But they would. They would all look at you like, you're not throwing around the F word, man. What's going on? Like, why? Why would that be weird? What does it communicate connotatively? Disrespect? Yeah, but I'm saying if, like, take the way you talk to your mom, and if now I'm going to talk to my friends that way for a day. I'm guaranteeing you would get weird looks. Sure, but beyond that, like, what does it communicate to that group that you're speaking that way now? Yeah.
That you're on, I guess you'd say the same level.
Ah.
You kind of see your parents as a higher level, I guess, when you see you speak to them more respectfully.
Okay, so you're communicating, and again, it's not a lack of respect, but it's a lack of like formality, right? When you throw around those terms, whatever they are, I use the F word because it's a good one. But take your pick, based on culture and age and all kinds of things. There's different words, different ways of speaking. But all of those communicate less formality. I'm included in this group because I talk like you, whoever it might be. Those are connotations. They're not part of the dictionary definition. Fuck means to copulate. That's what it means. But if you approach your friends, you're like, hey man, you ever see that copulating show the other day? They're like, what are you talking about? Why are you an alien? Connotations, okay? Associations with ways of speaking. Now, he could have phrased this in all kinds of different ways. And I'm gonna really focus in on, because there's different things we could talk about. But let's just think about this. Singles bar. To say it like that. And again, this might be hard because this isn't necessarily a phrase you guys are super used to, especially these days. But do you have any associations with that kind of a phrase? What does it sound like to you? What's the tone, right? Any of that? What do you think?
Open.
What's up?
Open.
You said open?
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
In a way, welcoming. It's not really like, it doesn't discriminate or anything, it's just,
I'm trying so hard to hear you, I'm so sorry.
it's like, it's not discriminating or anything, it's just like open for everybody.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, I guess you're saying, and we're just riffing right now, right? I'm gonna take notes based on what you guys give me. I guess you're kind of saying, it's inclusive based on the fact, like this, like singles, which is everybody but people in couples. Yeah, I guess I'd give you that. Okay. Okay. What else? What's the tone? Singles bar. What's that sound like?
Oh, one night stand.
What's up?
Oh, one night stand.
Okay. Your shift. That's fine. Why do you say that?
Because they're all singles, so most of them are either gonna get really drunk.
Well, okay, so here's the key. They're all singles, but they're at a
Bar.
good. If it was singles library,
Single and read.
you don't get that same connotation, right? It's a little different. Sure. So, and again, I'm going to use slightly. You guys talk how you talk. I talk how I talk. Okay. But I think what you're getting at is this question of, or even maybe this promise of promiscuity, right? Just like, hey, I'm lonely, and you're like, hey, I'm lonely too. Well, you know, be less lonely together. It'd be cool. You know, like, it's kind of what you're getting at. Yeah, yeah. And again, how you get there is not just this. It's the fact that these two terms are married. Pardon the pun there, but married to each other, right? Singles bar, and what bar implies. What are the connotations we have? Just around that word by itself has connotations, right? What are some of the connotations we have around that word? A bar. Even the way it sounds, right? Man, where is your dad? He's at the bar again. Like, what's that word?
I could say, for some people, it's like a bad place or maybe a good place.
Why?
Because it depends on, like, I guess, what your parents do and how they act out on the nature.
Bless you guys. Yeah, you guys are so young. A lot of the world does right now. Yeah. Well, I mean, like, even beyond that, and I know that can be hard for some of you guys, given most of the world, as you understand it right now, is like, well, what did my mom and dad tell me about, right? Like, fair. But, like, when you picture a bar, what do you picture now? What does it look like? Yes, that is the goal. But what does it look like? What'd you say? I think you said something. Damn. Masks make it hard. Somebody over here. Yeah, what's up?
Based on my head, it seems like a very sad place.
Okay, why?
Well, a bar in general, to me, doesn't seem that sad. I mean, sometimes it's more lively, but whenever you use the term singles bar, it makes me think of like a very depressing place.
Why? I'm not necessarily, I'm just wondering.
Because you're not happy that you're single.
Because you're single and drinking.
Yes.
Do they
not
get
happy
drunk
that
to
you're
get
single.
away from their feelings?
Do you understand? Look, all of this, now that we finally like broke the seal a little bit, these are all possible connotations to that term, right? That's kind of, as soon as you, and it takes a little time to get traction sometimes, but we have some now. Now, I think that stuff is fair to think about. This idea of sad, lonely, drinking. When I picture a bar, there's like neon shit up and it's just kind of loud and dirty, right? And kind of just like, why would anybody be here? And again, you come back to that question of like, well, where else are they gonna go? Right? Like it's, yeah. So we have that menu now in front of us of, I guess, sad, lonely, promiscuity. Now we can take that and say, it's all the time, and it's in your pocket. All the time we get. I mean, we even get that with pervasive, right? That's something worth talking about, but we get it, I think, enough for right now. So I'm going to table it, but we can talk about it. Talk to me about this. What does it mean that it's in your pocket?
That you keep your phone inside your pocket all day.
I'm so.
Because you keep your phone in your pocket all day.
Denotatively. Connotatively. What does it mean that it's in your pocket?
Easy
Easy access.
access.
The easiest access. Some of you, all of you at one point or another, it is so accessible, you cannot help yourselves. You will access it in the middle of class. Some of you will do it while I'm talking to you. Yeah. It's right there all the time. What we're saying now, again, it's almost like a math equation. Is that you have easy access to any of these connotations you want to talk about if you're writing this body paragraph, right? That's different from how it was from all of human history up to this point. If you wanted the singles bar experience, what did you have to do? I know this is something you guys aren't necessarily used to. What did you have to do? You had to go find one. You had to get up, get dressed. My teeth okay? No. You had to do that, right? Maybe you're going to go with a buddy or two, try to call them up with their phone number and figure that out. Then you go out to this place, and if you don't know about one ahead of time, you got to find one with like a phone book or something. It's a process. It's not this, right? And look, think about anything you've done in the past month where like there was a process to it. You had to go through a couple steps. Was there any point in that process where you're just like, fuck it, I'm not doing any more of this? And you just didn't do that thing? I know I have. I might do it once a day. Yeah. So the idea that we have easy access to this stuff, not just that we have access, but we have easy access. So what? And this is the big question we're always after. So what? Why is that worth telling us as readers? What is Ansari after, do you think? What's his goal with a statement like that?
To say that we have the easier access than what they used to have.
Again, yes. Yes. He wants us to have this idea, but still the question is, why? How does, to be fair to you, we haven't quite solved the denotation. You gave us the first half there. Yes. But I said this the very first day. Every communicative act, so I'm talking to you right now, we're communicating. He's writing to you once you pick up and read the book. That's an act of communication. Every communicative act has some kind of goal behind it. Usually multiple goals. What's his goal in telling you this? The connotation can help, but I'm just,
The fact that going through singles bar is definitely probably not the best way to meet, like as chapter 1 states, a soulmate, and neither is using your phone. Neither is like just contacting people on a whim, get together.
Okay. Well, okay, let me, so why do you say that? I'm not disagreeing, but you spell it out for us a little bit.
Because, I mean, of course, I would be willing to bet that a great majority of people in singles bars do not stick together.
Yeah, well, that brings us back to this and maybe a little of that.
And leaving out all the different dating websites, people that meet over things like Instagram and Snapchat or the phone, I would also be willing to bet they'll stay together.
Okay. So it's almost, if again, correct me if because I'll always paraphrase you guys, but correct me if I get it wrong. You're saying something like, it's almost like because again, you read that and it's so fast too, right? That in your pocket almost stays with you and you're like, easy, yeah, it's really cool, modern technology. We have all these sort of possibilities in front of us. That's really cool. It's almost like he takes that and says, you have easy access to bad options or unhelpful options, something like that.
You don't have to work for it. You don't have to put that much effort into it.
Okay. Did everybody hear that? Because you guys don't speak up very well. Yeah, this idea that presents an interesting idea too, right? And again, now we are into analysis. So you furthered that thought with saying like it's a lack of effort on your part, right? Would it be fair to say then that maybe he's implying that lack of effort equals like a lack of results? Yeah? Now all of a sudden we're off and running. Nowhere in this sentence does he say that explicitly, right? He does not say it. But if you go down the rabbit hole, you start with the quotation, you start with language. We took some notes, we just did some thinking, right? We looked at another part of the quotation and said, okay, do these do anything when you add them together? And it turns out, sure. And you just follow that train of thought. We are arguing here. And by the way, once you start down this, the actual analysis, you can usually go in a couple different directions, okay? We don't have time to maybe do that today. But if you're in the arena of a good argument, a lot of the time you have a couple options, okay? But we picked one. And from there, you just see where it goes. What we're basically saying now is his goal, his local goal in this quotation is to convince us of this idea. That's the start to a body paragraph. That's awesome. Right? And we all kind of hive-minded our way to get there. The other point I want to make to you, because this is a rhetorical analysis, and this will help you guys when it comes to sort of supporting your ideas. Keep in mind that it's not just telling us what his goal is, which, maybe we're going to argue it's this here, okay? But you also want to concentrate on how he tries to convince you of that goal, okay? If we're gonna let's take like a half step back real quick. Can anyone try, if we're gonna say this is his goal, can anyone go back to this quotation and in a sentence or two say how he tries to get us from this idea or from this statement to this idea? How do we do that, do you think? Yeah, sure.
I don't know, much earlier on in chapter 1, he starts talking about interviews with a lot of seniors and how they met. Like I remember one of the quotes I wrote down was I don't know, just the way they dated back then, the way that they were able to meet. That would have been the old-fashioned way, and that's pretty much the modern version of it, of the singles bar. So I don't know.
What you're describing is another paragraph. Second paragraph. You're getting this idea that maybe, depending on what quotation you could find or whatever, that for all the differences he talks about in the book, in some respects, maybe it's not entirely different. And that's an interesting idea that we probably don't have time to cover, but sure. But you're going off to a different thing, right? Yeah, which is fine. I mean, again, that would be something to explore in another paragraph. For this paragraph, can someone help us with words, get from this statement, you have a 24 singles bar in your pocket, to, he's really saying you have easy access to bad options, right? That it's about a lack of effort, which ultimately equals sort of a lack of success, I guess.
Because you're not putting much effort into doing that thing.
How do you get that from here, though? I just want someone to try to explain it to us. What about this statement speaks to a lack of effort?
The singles bar in your heart.
24/7, so you can do whatever you want. So it's not really like a problem.
So on the one hand, the pervasive nature of it, it's never closed sort of thing. Yeah? Okay. Anything else? Any other parts of the statement we could pinpoint? Is your hand up? I can't see. No, it is not. We talked about easy access. How did we get there in this statement? On the board. Did that man just say oh and stop? You guys killed. This is the easiest question I'll ask all semester. Easy access. You have easy access to apparently those bad options. How do we know in that quotation? Because it's in your pocket. Yeah. The point I'm making here is, like, when in doubt, always go back to the quotation. If you go down a rabbit hole, you feel like you need a little more ammunition, you feel like you need to explain yourself a little bit better, you can point back to that quotation. Be like, hey, we started talking about this, we're going to talk about this a little bit more, right? I'm going to take you back to my evidence. The point I'm making here is, and the point you will be making in your papers, is it's not just what he says, okay? That's denotation. It's how he says it that matters. And that's connotation, right? Some of you at the end of the semester will not like the fact that I say the fuck word occasionally, or whatever, right? And you'll put that in your evaluation, right? Good for you. You're reading the connotation of my speech based upon your own background and whatever programming you've been like given, right? Mine was different from yours. I grew up poor. I'm not saying you didn't. I don't know your life. But I know mine. It was rough. And part of that, associatively, comes with, vulgar speech. That's what vulgar means, by the way. Common. Not having money. You were probably taught, denotatively, vulgar means bad. It doesn't. Look that shit up. It means you're poor. But we added the connotation to be vulgar, to be poor, means to be bad. Not worthwhile. Speech is important. How you say things matters. That's your job in the paper. Okay? Questions about any of that? Well, the last little bit of class we have, we don't have a ton of time. We got a little bit of time. We could look at another quotation. I don't think we have a lot of time to do that. Fret not. We will do that for the next few classes, right? So it's going to be fun. I wanted to hazard into this global territory. We've read the first chapter. We've read the introduction. Some of you have read ahead. By the way, I'm going to say it again. Not a bad book, right? Relatively enjoyable. Not to mention, it's about you guys. I mean, you can't get into that. You're going to have a rough time in this whole school thing. But yeah, we talked about his local goal here, and maybe it's this. There are some other options that we don't have time for, but it's something, I think, this is a pretty good one, right? Maybe that's his local goal, to convince you of this. Okay. What do you think his bigger picture goals are? Like you could almost think of it as like he took this book and he spent all the time to research and write it and get it like to this. Probably took a long time and a lot of effort. And he just handed it to you. He's like, hey, read this. Why would he do that? What does he hope to accomplish, do you think? Yes?
To inform others and aid people in understanding why, in understanding the difficulties of day to day.
Okay. Here, hang on. I'm going to erase all of this in the off chance anyway. Does anybody need this still? Sweet. Okay. Okay. As with anything, at least in English, I can't speak to other languages that I do not speak, but most languages, I'm pretty sure, verbs are what matter, okay? Verbs move the language. So a specific one you used, which I like a lot, you said inform. I'm going to get to the rest of what you said in a second. But it seems like most of what he's a big part of what he's after, right, is to inform us about something, or maybe several somethings, right? He's trying to get information to you. Yes. Now your idea was what again? I'm sorry, you inform us of what?
Just in understanding the difficulties of dating today.
Okay. So one idea, and again, these are ideas. This is not a given, especially because, again, we've only read about 30 pages into this thing, right? So, it could change. This part, I don't think will change. That's the point I'm making to you. But this may develop further, whatever he's informing us about. One big thing you think right now is these difficulties when it comes to like modern dating, these problems, these struggles, the sort of complicated, what the hell am I doing sometimes thing, right? Sure. Now, one interesting question to that point would be, do you need to be informed of that? I'm honestly kind of asking, because you guys are living it right now, I think, for the most part. Is that a worthwhile goal for him to have? Because it's a book. Again, we're not going to read the whole thing unless you just want to. But it's a book. That takes a minute to do. If you're going to write a whole book to just tell us that dating is hard, I mean, right? It just begs the question. It's something worth thinking about. I almost wonder if there's more to that, or if he has other goals alongside it.
Yeah, goals of how to get to that goal.
How to deal with it.
Yeah,
Like, go ahead.
he has other goals like how to get to the whole dating thing, whatever, how to deal with dating and how to, how to like, I guess, everything around dating, being by yourself or single life.
Okay, so not just highlighting, informing us of the difficulties, but maybe alongside that, informing us still, that verb, of how to perhaps circumvent, which just means go around some of those difficulties, or deal with them, right? Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll ask the rest of the room. So far, does that seem fair when it comes to like one of his big goals in this book? Okay. Yeah, I think so. And again, understand, we're just getting more specific. We're not discrediting this by adding to it. We're saying, well, there's a little more to that. If it was 300 pages or however long it is of just all the ways that dating sucks, you would understandably probably get a little tired of it at some point. So there's a little more going on. Yeah, I would say so. Okay. Can we say he's doing anything other than just information? Because we could keep going. I think, again, there's other things he informs us about. Okay. But does he do anything else other than just inform, do you think? Keep in mind what we're trying to think about in this paper is not just what he says, which is kind of a lot of this, okay? But how he says it. Might that be part of his goal too? Like, how would you describe the tone of this book? We've read enough of it now. It's going to be like this for the rest of the way. What's the tone? I guess we start here. What is tone? You might help us out with a definition of that word, tone. No, like music majors or anything?
You like.
What? What did she say?
The author's feelings, like towards the emotions when you
Kind of. The emotions you're communicating, the almost like the temperature of the prose is a way to think of it. What were you gonna say?
Like, the feeling you get from reading. So, like,
Okay. Yeah. So again, I mean, I keep giving you guys examples, but like, part of the reason I chose this book is it's not written like a textbook, right? And you guys have dealt with many textbooks in your lives up to this point. What's the tone of a textbook typically? Like, say you're in social studies class and you're like on page 175 and you're going to learn about India and like, or whatever, you know? What's the tone of that usual textbook? How would you describe that? Very serious. I'll give you a good SAT word, taciturn. Taciturn, T-A-C-I, turn. You don't know what it means, look it up. It basically means serious. School marmish, there's another word for you. Isn't it weird that I can say fuck and say things like taciturn? It's almost like all the people that told you, like, if you curse, you don't have a vocabulary, didn't know what they were talking about. It's just a pet peeve of mine. Very, very like old school, strict almost is the feeling of a textbook, right? And that leads to that textbook being boring, usually, right? Understand the line I'm drawing here is not that the tone is boring. The end result is boring. The tone is dry, serious. It lacks blood. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's lifeless. Those textbooks. The tone. So what's the tone of this book? Because again, I think we'd all agree it's different. Doesn't read like a textbook, right? How would you describe the way he speaks in this book? That's one thing to think about. Does it feel like you're reading sometimes, or does it feel like something else?
he talking to us.
Feels like he's talking to you. Why do you say that?
Could you can relate to it somewhat.
How so? I'm not disagreeing. I'm just.
Like from the store he playing. Like,
Oh, with Tanya?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so in a way, you could maybe argue part of his tone is accomplished because he's pretty open in terms of like personal anecdotes he'll share to help you. Hang on, I'm gonna lose this a lot. That's another good verb, perhaps, is he relates to his audience, right? And there are different ways he does that, but he, like by sharing what part of himself is one way to think of that, right? Okay, yeah. I think you had a hand up over here.
I hate to use the word sympathetic, but like how he understands our situation because he's been through this.
Okay, well, and we could continue, shares parts of himself, but yeah, the kind of the flip side of that is also saying, because understand relating to someone is a two-way street, right? If you're saying you relate to him, you're also implying that he relates to you, right? That's how relationships work. Sure, I like that. Okay. What else about the tone? Again, stands out to you, seems different. Part of the reason I chose this book is because I think it's probably super different from most books. Easily most books you've ever been assigned, right? What stands out to you in terms of the tone? What's different about the way he speaks in this book?
It's like he's teaching it almost.
What do you mean?
It's like basically like a middle class kind of. He's like telling you all different things about how all singles are how all people singles are reacting to it.
Okay, so another, and again, these are goals, I'm kind of conflating that with tone, but you're saying part of his tone is like, he is super informed. Another way to think of that is he's knowledgeable, right? Can't talk him right, sorry. It seems like he knows what he's talking about. That's important. I love this example. When you guys walk in the first day, how did you know I was the teacher? I stood up here and I had a marker. Basically. Right? Nobody asked for ID. After that hurdle, the big hurdle I have to jump is I have to at least sound like I know what I'm talking about. If I don't, you would justifiably be concerned. Is this guy the real teacher? Does our teacher need help? Is he locked in that guy's basement? Things like that. You still don't know the answer to those questions, right? But given my tone, the way I carry myself, hopefully, at worst, I've tricked you all. And he is in my basement, and he does need help. But we're doing this now, right? I seem like I know what I'm talking about. I could be full of shit right now. You have no clue. Kind of fun. Okay. We're almost done. I see some of you like getting real antsy. This thing just turned off, by the way, which is super helpful. What time is it? Oh, sweet. There's one big element of his tone we have not talked about, and it's honestly kind of making me anxious that you guys haven't brought this up yet. How would you describe his tone? I'll go back to your mother. When your mother's upset with you, right? She has a certain tone that she uses, and you know that tone. You know it well. You know how to act when you hear that tone. You probably get real quiet, things like that. Right? Tone can communicate certain ideas. What's his tone? It's not angry, right? How would you describe it? What does he sound like in this book? How does he talk? Here and then here. What?
Like we do.
Like you do. What do you mean by that?
He doesn't speak like, he doesn't speak like most of the books where we have to read.
Yeah. Can you point to a specific, I agree, but can you point to a specific element of his speech? I'll let you hunt for a second. What'd you have? It was you, right?
The joking kind of way, like he speaks to us like he's our friend, like he's someone like on our level.
And that's part of the relating, right? He's not just informed, but here's a nice bit of wordplay. He's informal, right? Absolutely. What's interesting is most of the time he's informal. But there are spots, I don't know if we've gotten there yet, I can't quite remember. There are spots where he's hella formal. And that shift, when you encounter it, is kind of interesting. Most of the book, I mean, he starts with, oh shit. That's pretty informal, we would agree, right? But there are other spots where he almost puts on his sociologist hat, right? And he'll give you like figures, or he'll talk about it like in a, almost like he's not relating to you real quick, right? Because he has to give you, like there's almost no other way to say whatever he's trying to say. Yeah? That's an interesting shift on what you guys think about. But yeah, most of the time he's informal. I would argue, most of the time, I think he's funny. Or comedic at least. You may not tee-hee when you read the book. But it's kind of has some levity to it. That means lightness. When people talk about comedy a lot, you'll hear a term like levity. That's also that lack of seriousness that somebody was talking about, right? It's not just a lack of formality. There's a lightness to the speech, the way he talks. All of those don't just help accomplish his goal, which, by the way, I think there's more to this list, okay? But they also help us think about what the goal might be. He could write the book seriously. It'd be a very different book, but he could do it. And then we're probably squarely talking about this, if it was super serious. That's like all information. That's a textbook. When you think about his tone in certain spots, that also clues you in on what the goal might be. Why is he being funny here? Why does he switch? All of a sudden he's being formal. Why? Right? That's that big why we're going to be after all semester. I want you to start paying attention to it as best as you can. And especially if something stands out to you, some element of his tone, something he says, don't just write that down, but think for a second, well, why is he doing that, do you think? That's how you're going to figure this paper out. Right? Questions about any of that? I assume not. Okay. For next time, right under the gun. Damn, I'm good. Ansari chapter 2. Please pay attention to the page numbers. I understand some of you are using those e-copies. It's either chapter 2 or chapter 3. And I'll try to remember to look at it. One of those chapters you can skip like 20 pages. Yeah, I got some people haven't seen their eyes all class just looked at me. Skip what? So those page numbers matter. In terms of the e-copies, I'll try to look at it on my break here and shoot you guys an email where I can say read from here to here. But it's either chapter 2 or 3. You skip a bunch of pages. You don't have to read that stuff. So you want to be aware of that. Also, our first discussion board assignment. It's on CourseDen. There's like a little prompt for you to think about. The way discussions work, I want you to write your post, whatever it is, okay? Address the questions I give to you on CourseDen. But then also, I want you to respond to 2 of your classmates. Ideally, your response would be a little more than, "You're awesome," which is nice, to be clear. Nicer than you guys usually are on the internet, probably, right? Start there, but don't stop there. Why do you think their thing is awesome? Or what's even better, do you have something to add? Hey, the idea you're talking about here reminds me of when he says this. Or, hey, I like what you're saying about this, but then he says this a couple pages later, and I'm not sure, like there might be a problem with what you're saying. Maybe you should think about this other thing too. Right? All right. I'll see you guys Monday. Thank you. Quietly shuffle out now.